what's crazy? I don't think either one of us have been successful and sort of what we call survived in real estate because of our social media, right? I don't think we did it because of technology. I don't think we make it through different markets and thrive in the roller coaster of markets that we've been through because of scripts. I think a huge part of why really great agents find success, and success meaning repeat and referral business, success meaning they actually can know how to build a business that works, whether it's a seller's market, a buyer's market, whether it's the wild, wild west, like it's been for the last, I don't know, it had been for the last 5 years, or if it's a buyer's market where we're being offered iPads just to basically see a house because the sellers are begging for you to come in the door. I think the success over all these years for great agents that find success, I think their ability to negotiate the market, negotiate the whole process was a huge differentiator between agents. And the word negotiation, and you are going to talk about this, is a huge word. Like I think it's way bigger than what everybody makes. Everybody thinks negotiation is the act of offering a price and negotiating a sale price on a house. When I'm talking about great agents, the negotiation happens before it even goes on the market. A negotiation occurs when great agents know how to do it in a way to navigate the best thing for their clients and the best case scenario for all of them. But things changed. Things changed during COVID, and we hit the wild, wild west of real estate. And it's been long enough now. It wasn't a year. We went through a wild year and they're like, oh, wow, that was crazy. And then it was 2 years, and then it was 3 years. And then all of a sudden, I actually think there's a generation of agents that never even know anything prior to 2020. So either they're doing a lot of deals and helping a lot of people and doing a lot of transactions, or they're learning from people because they're doing numbers of transactions, and the people they're learning from, they haven't had to negotiate anything. I see a lot of agents right now that haven't had to negotiate a single part of all of the transactions that they've done. And I know for a fact that can work in a short time. But man, if I don't know the roller coaster that different markets make those people go away very quickly. A lot of generation agents right now are seeing people and they're going, man, they must be successful. I'm going to do it that way. And they're all going to go down with the ship, because later on when the market shifts, they're not going to actually know how to navigate the market. And what we're going to talk about today isn't something that is specific to today's market. It's actually something that you need to know genuinely how to do, even if you haven't had to do it over the last 6 years. Man, that's a lot. So let me bridge the gap. I want to bridge the gap because ironically, I met this person. I met Matt 11 years ago, 12. I don't even know. I have to look back, because we did a deal together on my brother's house. So my brother bought a house at 107 Ford Street. And him and Eric were working together, and somehow, some way we negotiated and did a deal together. And I am a bit emotional about this because, I don't know, a couple months ago, I was teaching a continuing education class, and I see this man show up in my class and sit for 3 hours to hear me teach my passion of the buyer consultation. And I know after 25 years, he doesn't need to be there. He didn't need to be sitting in an in-person class listening to me talk. And so what I know about him, and I've learned about him, especially now, because I take it to another level, is that, man, this guy does really care about education. He also cares about helping people. And what I learned afterwards, after I connected with him, is that he teaches a ton himself. And he was there to learn, but also, man, if he's not learning. And he came to me, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, something like that, and called me and talked about he's teaching a class on negotiation. And I'm like, this keeps happening month after month, topics that we should need to talk about. And people keep coming my way that are perfect to talk about that. And so, Man, if we're not here right now today, buddy, and I know it took a long way for me to get there, but I want to introduce you guys all to Matt Mittman. It's funny because he's in my sandbox. This is not someone, a lot of people we've had as guests have been all over the country sometimes. People have been all over, and Kim and I get to meet people, but Matt's right there in my world. And he has survived this thing longer than I have, 24 years. He helps buyers and sellers, and so he's not specific to both buyers or sellers, but he is actually a leader. He owns multiple offices, but he's transitioned from doing the business into now helping other agents do the business as a leader and a broker and teaching classes, instructor, moving like educator. By the way, when you teach continuing edge class, it's not something that you make anywhere near the money that you make if you just stayed in real estate working with clients. So this is someone who actually cares to pass on his 24 years. And I'm really grateful, buddy, that that you decided that you wanted to teach. And I'm really grateful you said yes when I said to join me today. There's a lot to fill in the blanks. So why don't you do this? Fill in the blanks of what these people need to know about Matt Mittman.
I think the biggest thing to learn is you mentioned me being in your class and after 20 plus years not having to be, and I would disagree with that. I need to be, because that's what I've learned in this business. We're constantly learning. It's constantly changing. I like to call it tools in the tool belt. The tools in the tool belt in 2008 versus 2021 are totally different. And the real challenge we're facing right now is that some agents are using 2020, 21 tools in 2026, when some of them work well. I agree 100%. But there's another sense like, oh, I got to dust up for some of us newer agents, get new tools. And for some of us seasoned agents, go and dusting off those other forms. I'll give you a perfect example.
Let's do it.
I've had 6 conversations in the last 13 days about sale and settlement forms. So that's a form here in Pennsylvania, which is saying, hey, I'm buying a house and it's contingent upon the sale and settlement. And so talk about a negotiation. Now you're negotiating. It's part of it's the education and understanding the form. And then it's like, well, I have to understand it in order and then I got to figure out how to best use it for my client. So anyway, that was, you asked me to kind of continue it and share it. And I just wanted to touch on that.
Guys, by the way, be careful. Both of us, when we talk, we both have a lot of energy. So we're going to bring a ton of energy. But the reality is, I think both of us are starting to see a shift in the market. I'm grateful because I get to spend 3 times a week with agents all over the country in the coaching group. And so it's not just our area. All areas of the country are seeing a shift in the market. And people are asking questions that sometimes in their whole careers have never had to deal with. Like, if you think about it, we deal with sale and settlement questions or settlement contingencies and what happens when it shifts from one to the other, or inspection contingencies. There's agents in our business that have never had to deal with any parts of that in their careers. And they've done a lot of deals. And so the concern that I think I see, and the reason why we're doing this is, as the market shifts, it's the agents that, if you really want to thrive, you got to listen to people that have been through the different markets to know, all right, you might seem like you're great right now, but you're not sharpening your tools. Man, I am so emotional about this. The best agents in our country, if you ask them what their business looks like, they would spend more time talking about what they have to work on and polish, because they know more than anybody else that what they're doing good today may not work if they're not constantly staying on top of polishing their machine. You literally just hit the nail on the head that this literally is going to smack somebody in the face. It's going to smack new agents that never had to deal with negotiation, or it's going to smack the agents that 7 years ago knew how to do it, but haven't had to do it in so long. And now they're meeting with a seller or meeting with a buyer, and they don't know how to navigate what the market brings when it's not the Wild West, when it's not the craziness that can happen on both sides. Man, all right, what do we fill in the blank about you, though? This is about you. I want people to know who you are. So tell everybody about you personally. Go for it.
Yeah. I've been in the real estate 20 plus years, and I graduated with a teaching. And I always wanted to be a teacher and a coach. That didn't work out. And somehow I got into real estate. And then about 10, 12 years ago, I started adding the teaching piece of it to real estate. So now I'm kind of finding my groove of kind of that mix of helping buyers, sellers, investors, and also getting a chance to teach. I've had the opportunity. I just taught a 6 hour course on negotiations to a leadership of Tri-County Association of Realtors. I did a 1 hour webinar the other week. So it's just an opportunity. My goal in life is to make a difference, whether big or small, is to impact others' lives. I've dealt with some real challenges in my life, and through those lessons, I'm truly trying to make a difference, and education is my tool.
You know what? At some point, we're going to have you share those challenges with people, because I think all of us have a journey that got us to wherever we are in real estate, because we're all in real estate because we're here in this meeting. But I think our journey and our story is actually what makes us successful. And so eventually we're going to get to that. But I think I want to make sure with your time, especially, and we have an hour in the session, I want to get to really the topic of the day of negotiation, and understand first what we're talking about. What do I mean by negotiation? And I love it. I know you have a definition that we talked about the other day. So do me a favor. I want you to share with everybody how you define what negotiation actually is. And then let's talk about that start.
Well, I think a lot of it falls back to mindset. Like when I take Adam's class about buyers, what I picked up from it, one of the key principles is, what's my mindset with a buyer? And so I bring that over to negotiation. What's my mindset? Because you hear the word negotiation, some of us are palm sweat, some of us like it. You watch the movies, it can be harsh sounding, aggressive. And I've learned over the years, for me personally, and what I've taught the students, is just an exchange of information. So for me, instead of going into negotiation, I'm just talking about an exchange of information, and it works for me in our mindset. Now, the caveat to that is, it is very important, like, why negotiation? Because if you look at the 2025 NAR home buyer and seller profile, you see, what do buyers want and sellers want? Negotiation. That is in what they want. 1000 Watt just had a program, and again, what was in there, what is specifically the question I'm thinking about was sellers, and negotiation was the biggest term. So from a marketing standpoint, when you're in that listing presentation, that buyer presentation, you certainly want to use the word negotiation because it carries a lot of cachet and importance to it. But my mindset is,
love this. Keep going.
Exchange
Yes.
of information. So that's my mindset. I think you need to find your mindset, what works for you. And so our palms don't sweat. And it doesn't matter if we're brand new, we're seasoned, we're experienced, because you've all had that situation where you didn't want to pick up the phone or you didn't want to send that text. And it's just, one starts with a mindset.
I absolutely, like, literally, here, I love what I want everybody to hear what he just said, because there's what we talk about with the clients. The clients, their word is negotiation. So they're going to use that word, and that's a critical thing. And that's why they give that feedback of it being the most important thing. So we translate that as, we should use that word when we're meeting with our clients, that our skill is negotiation. That doesn't mean that when we look at it from our mindset, that's how we have to look at it. We can use the word, but see it differently in how we actually judge ourselves and our skills at it. And so if you take it bigger than negotiating being price or sale price, when you say it's the research of words,
exchange of information.
I love this. So I love it. Let's start with that exchange of information as being first. It's researching the information to begin with. So to be a great negotiator, you have to actually be able to research information based on the scenario you're dealing with. We're going to get to the scenarios of listing side and buying side. But when we're talking about negotiating, I think the skill of a great negotiator is someone who can research the information and find the information relevant to their client. Does that sound about right? Does that basically connect the dots on how you define it?
Yeah, absolutely. The preparation. Absolutely.
Love this. All right. So I want to take it a step further, though. And I said this to you, that if we're saying we have to research the information, I think the negotiation of it has to be how you actually translate that information, and then how you actually, I say leverage because leverage is the term that the clients are going to want to hear, negotiation and leverage. But from a mindset standpoint, it's how do I read the information, read the tea leaves? How do I see, how do I translate it? And then how do I actually navigate it with my clients? Like, how do I then go to my clients and say, here's how we're going to climb Mount Everest? I'm going to do this a million times today. But when you're talking about negotiation, you're negotiating your way up a mountain with them. And so the mindset when I talk about negotiation isn't about sale price and negotiating. And even it's not even about how we go back and forth. It's mostly about how we gather the information for our clients, how we translate it, and then how we actually show our clients the direction that they may want to go in and give them the options. You're literally negotiating the transaction. That's the skill that I want everybody to understand that we're talking about today. It's not as simple as, well, let me show you how to write an offer and negotiate a sale price. I love that you started with, this is about information. And who is, I think, the greatest agents in our markets, or any market you're in, is the one that can read the information and know what they're looking at on behalf of their clients. Sound good?
Great.
Anybody have any questions about that? Anybody have any thoughts that they want to, by the way, if you have something to say, comment in the chat. If you don't want to speak up and you don't want to go on it and speak up, totally comment in the chat or raise your hand. Or if you have a question for Matt or myself, make sure you guys know this is totally an open forum. I want you guys to bring your thoughts, your experiences, and everything that you're thinking about. Make sure you raise your hand. All right. Everybody good with that? All right. So Matt, let's do this. If we're defining negotiation as, all right, not more than just the transaction, it's the act of being a great agent and bringing the information together, then it has to start well before a deal happens, right? It has to start, and well, I'm going to put the pressure on you because this isn't my field, but I think we talked about the starting point of this has to be the listing side. Because I think if we're going to talk about this, man, the market shifting is really highlighting the need of the listing side to go into listing appointments so much different than you used to or even ever had to in your life. If you're in this group right now and you've only been in real estate 6 years, then your listing appointments are going to change. And the information you have to gather beforehand, the way you translate it, how you review it with your clients so they make the right decision, it's going to change pretty dramatically on you on the listing side if you're not skilled at negotiating the market shift. So here's what I want to do. I want to give you the floor to talk about the listing side and talk about how this matters when you're listing a house.
Yeah, how to win listing appointments, right? And you go in there and you do your marketing stuff, which is fantastic. But one of the things that really sets you apart is when you talk to your seller about, hey, thank you for having me in. I know you brought in a couple other people. I totally respect the competition. What was their negotiation strategy? And a lot of times they're going to say, well, what do you mean? Well, listen, do you want to set an offer deadline if it's a competitive market? Do you want to review offers as they come in? If offers come in and there's one pretty good, do we want to let the other people who have future showings know? Well, what's the pro and con of that? The pro is that they'll know that there's an offer in, and the con is that they'll cancel the appointment, because what happens when competition happens? Some people engage in competition and some people shy away. So when Adam asked me the question on the listing, what a great way to stand out is talking about your multiple offer strategy, your negotiation style. And I highly recommend in a listing appointment, generally run 45 minutes to an hour, is that your top three things, you decide 1 and 2, but one of them the third thing should be the negotiation tactics and strategies. And then when you're wrapping up at the end, and hopefully you've earned that listing, that's great. But if not, you're leaving them with your top 3 things. So at the beginning and the end, and people learn through story. So if you're brand new, hopefully you can share a story from your trainer, coach, or mentor. But if you're seasoned and experienced, I could bore you guys all day long with the paperwork right now. But instead, I'm going to share, when I'm in on a listing appointment, I'm going to share 1 or 2 stories. I'm going to share the story about the seller who decided to go with the strategy. A lot of times sellers will say, Matt, I want to leave the price high in order to have some wiggle room. Would totally respect that strategy. I'm just going to give them more information because nobody wants their mind changed. Part of negotiation is how you exchange the information and the order of information. And I'm going to share it in a certain way. So what you want on that listing appointment is to talk through a couple negotiation strategies and scenarios. You don't want to show up and throw up on them. It's too much information, right? You just want to give them the highlights and keys, and then you do it in the beginning and the end. And that's kind of a quick highlight, Adam.
All right, so let's do this. I want to compare what I think it has been currently on the listing side. Not that I've been in a million listing appointments, as we all know, but I do believe through my team and through a million different people that I've been a part of, I know sort of generally what the listing presentation has been over the last 6 years. And I want to show you guys what we mean by information gathering that's going to change. Because You did when you go into a listing appointment and saying 20 or 21 or 22, the information that you need to go into that listing appointment is sizably different than the information you need to have now going into a listing appointment if you're aware that the market is shifting. So when we're talking about what I believe has happened in 2020, you had a listing appointment, you met with a seller, you basically knew that within a range of literally, I don't know, 20% of the proper list price, you could probably get away with listing it at any point with whatever the seller wanted to list it at. So even when you went in with comps and the seller comes back to you with the 5 other agents that tell them they could sell it for more, you're not needing to negotiate because in reality, you could put it overpriced in the market and you'll probably still get, maybe you don't get 20 offers, you get 15, and you didn't have to negotiate with a seller because even if you were wrong by, I don't know, how crazy did the market get? 10, 15, 20% over asking price? How wrong could you be without having to negotiate with the seller the price or negotiate with a seller? What happens if we don't get an offer? If we don't get an offer within X amount of days, do we have a plan? So all the things that you don't have, you never had to do that. So let's just talk about what you had to do. You sat down with the seller and you showed them that you could put a house on the market, get offers, put it on by Friday, get offers by Monday, and your skill in listing the house could be just showing what the minimum against other agents. And if you got the listing, you never really had to negotiate much. I mean, does that sound about right?
Yeah, in 20 and 21, the market took care of itself. And what I would contrast 2020 and 21 to for the seasoned agents on here is 2008. I mean, you're just
Yes.
like 2 extremes of the market. And what's really powerful right now, and what's going to give us a lot of value is that sellers are going to a family barbecue and they're hearing about multiple offers when they're having one beer with someone, and when they go to the other person to have a beer, they're hearing about a price reduction. So sellers are more confused than ever because house matter, condition, pricing matters, that we as realtors are more valuable in a transitioning market. And here's the key to know as a realtor, nobody's going to plant a flag and say, the market has changed today. We live it, see it, breathe it on the front lines. And that's why it's important to us to know all this information, to bring it to the seller. So
there you go.
If we are in a 2020-21 situation, we have our tools in our tool belt to navigate that. And if we're in a 2026 situation or a 2008 situation, we have the tools in the tool belt. That's why you're valuable, because you are helping them understand the different scenarios. Just like I want my surgeon to understand that, well, 83% of the time the surgery goes well and this happens, but I want that surgeon to know if I fall in that 17% of the time when there's a hiccup, right? I want my surgeon, so I want my real estate professional to know, hey, you can navigate a extremely competitive situation, or you can handle a situation where there's 8, 9 showings but no offers.
So this is what the difference is between just getting the info. First of all, it starts with knowing what information you have to look at. So for instance, if I'm just giving you guys examples of what he's talking about, what we're talking about, when you go into a listing appointment now, if you are smart enough to be aware of the shifting market, if you are at picnics and you're hearing, like he said, the one person talking about that they got multiple offers and the next person talking about how they haven't sold it and it's going to be a price reduction, that is a sign the market is shifting, which means if you really want to be smart, that's shifting the information you need to know about before the listing appointment. Maybe in 20 and 21, you didn't need to know about how many price reductions there have been in the current market. You don't need to be able to sit down with a seller and say, let me show you why if you price it wrong in the current market, you're going to actually be doing price reductions. So the information you have to gather before you even show up for the listing appointment is the beginning of your skill of negotiation, and then sitting with the seller in the listing. And this is going to be the hardest time ever to do it from a listing side, because how many sellers are you guys going to meet with where the seller hears too many of their people where they're multiple offers, and so they want to hear from you, from the 5 other agents that they've already met with, no, we're still in the crazy market, go ahead and overprice it. But you are the professional. Maybe only 1 out of 5 agents isn't going to be willing to say to that seller, let me show you why I've gathered this data about your house, And now I'm going to show you how I translated it. And I'm going to show you why pricing it actually a little under market in the opposite of what those other agents are telling you. That's the negotiation that you're going to have to start doing, but you're going to need the info. You're going to need to see price reductions in a neighborhood. You're going to need to see expired start showing up. Do you want to be one of these people, or do you want to be one of the ones that got over asking price? This is going to be the hardest time for you guys. And it's funny, I'm talking about listing side with all this energy and passion like I do this, but I need you guys to do the right thing. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm meeting with buyers. I would rather you as a listing agent price the house accordingly so that we can sit down with a buyer and not sit there and go, all right, well, they don't have any interest or any offers. If you price it accordingly the right way in the beginning, we wouldn't be waiting for price reductions. We wouldn't be sitting there and waiting for our buyers to go, well, it's way overpriced. I need you guys to get these sellers understanding that the market is shifting. So, man, what other information do you think? I had a note to say, what information are great negotiators looking for right now prior to listings that they may not think they had to?
I think you nailed it. Is that the most important thing is obviously understanding motivations. That's an obvious. Using your how and what questions, open-ended questions to sellers to better understand what they're looking for and give them a time to talk about it. And the key point is we're seeing these statistics come out nationally, but it's a local market, as we all know. And that's the one thing you want to know. I mean, in your pocket, you're in a townhome in the 4 to 6. It's not just that I'm in XYZ county or township. It's that townhomes between 400 and 700,000 are 1.2 months of inventory, 3.4 months of inventory. And generally 0 to 3 months is a seller's market. Sellers have leverage. 4 to 6 months generally is a balanced market, and 6+ months of inventory is a buyer's market. So it's really supply and demand. And those are the fancy words, inventory levels and absorption rate. But it's just knowing, hey, I go into the supermarket, there's one loaf of, like before the snowstorms in our area, there's one loaf of bread that's really high in demand. I know I can price that whatever it wants. But then if you go look at the bananas that are rotting on the at the supermarket, you're like, oh man, no, 49
There's something wrong with those.
Cents. And you don't want to be the rotting banana, because when you list and you go on the market, you're green, there's potential, there's hope. You turn to yellow, and then boy, if you misprice it, boy, then you become the get all those spots all over it.
Like literally, by the way, we're only basically talking about list price when we talk about negotiating with a seller. I feel like we could do 2 hours on how you guys, when you list a house, it's not just price. Like everything you just said, like how often have any agents had to do that? In my experience, most of my career, I've watched listing agents go to a listing and show them why they don't want to be the rotting banana. They want to be the nice, shiny object. And the conversation has always been, like I used to say, you want to tell the seller, I want to make sure that the buyer says, why would I buy that house when I could buy your house? And you never want them to say, why would I buy your house when I could buy the competition? And so in many, many years, we haven't even thought of competition. You haven't thought about the other brown banana or any bananas, because just having banana is all the buyers wanted. And knowing that the market is shifting and sitting with a seller now and saying, let me show you that maybe even the 5 other agents you met with prior to me who aren't showing you that you might be a brown banana, let me show you at least why you might be and how doing it this way could help. If you're not smart enough, and that's not even just price. What about how you market the house? Because if you sit with a seller in 2020 and 21 and the house is cluttered and it needs staging or it needs cleaning, how often do you actually need to force the hand of the seller to do those things when in reality they could get away with not doing that, probably still get more money than they listed it for, and you would look like a great agent if you just told them, hey, you don't have to clean, you don't have to declutter, you don't have to get your house ready. We shouldn't take the efforts of maybe redoing the roof, negotiating with the seller, something that they haven't had to even think about. Most agents haven't had to do that for years. They haven't had to show a seller, you know what, we don't want to put it on the market right now. We want to declutter or get a stager. That's negotiation that the agents who are going to fail in this are going to just keep putting it on the market. They'll price the seller once, and then it's going to look bad. And then all of a sudden the seller, after 1 week, by the way, because the seller is going to think a week is forever, those agents are going to sit there and lose listings because in reality, they didn't get the information to understand pricing or condition. Wow. Oh my God. Dude, Matt, pricing, condition matter.
Oh,
They actually matter.
yeah. And you brought up a great point for reminding everybody that your listing strategy cannot just be the one weekend multiple offer thing. Now, I hope you get that, and I hope it works out for you and the seller. But you really
Yeah.
need you really need a 6 week runway. Meaning, hey, here's my, if you go real simple, you can have an open house strategy out of the gate, or you can have it as a tool in the tool belt. We're going to go on. We're going to first check out those first 7 to 11 days, and then we might have an open house. And there's a whole bunch of different. This isn't on listings necessarily,
Yep.
but you just need a 6 week strategy so you're prepared to negotiate the multiple offer situation in week
I love
one, but
this.
you're also ready to navigate the next 6 weeks. And it's just different tools in the tool belt, and it's when you deploy them. I find a lot of people who learned in 20 and 21 who do a fantastic job, by the way, but they just haven't been in a different market. They'll use every resource in the first weekend, which is great from a great marketing perspective. But boy, you don't start a marathon by doing a sprint right out of the gate, right? You're not going to make the marathon. So it's learning how to navigate different times. And what a great way to stand out at your listing appointment when you have a first weekend strategy and you have a 6 week strategy, and you're helping your seller understand that.
And you're showing them, by the way, the data. Dude, this always starts with information. I love when you said negotiation is all about the gathering of information and sharing of information, because you have you as a listing agent sharing information with a seller, them sharing information back with you. And in the end, you're translating it and you're going to get to a decision. But most of the time, we haven't had to even speak about these things with sellers. We haven't had to speak about what if scenarios. And so now you're over promising and under delivering at 8 days. Instead of saying to them, oh, by the way, I'm going to tell you how it's going to be. And if it doesn't play out, we have a strategy if it doesn't sell. And now you're actually showing them to be the professional. And when it goes out, it's not a surprise. I mean, literally, man.
And Adam, I want to add to that inspections because
I was just going there.
And that is helping a seller understand it, that everyone who sold in 20 and 21, no inspections for the most part. And now they have to navigate inspections, and there might be a situation where a buyer does inspections. Like, I'll give you an example. If you're a seller and you have 2 offers, good offers, it's not a crazy multiple offer, it's 2 offers. Do you want that buyer who just started looking, or do you want the buyer who's been looking for 9 months and who has been struggling? And both offers are pretty close.
Yep.
Right. And so now if you bring the inspections into it, now let's think about what happens during the inspection period. So in the inspection period, buyer who just entered the market, is there more of a chance that they get cold feet because they just started versus a buyer who's been looking for 9 months? Now they might be willing to bend a little bit more because they've been looking for 9 months. And there's a bunch of other things in there.
So much.
When you talk about inspections, what a great way to stand out on your listing appointment. 1, reminding the sellers about inspections, and 2, giving them a couple of thoughts on how you're going to navigate that negotiation when you get to inspections.
Honestly, it's hilarious because the way I was going to bridge our gap between the listing side and the buying side, because in reality, there's a lot of things that transfer between the ability to negotiate on the listing side and buying side. The ability to negotiate a sale price is clearly something that we both need to know how to do. Like, I'm going to need to negotiate a sale price with my buyer to get them to a price to make a deal happen. But in reality, the way to bridge it in my mind is to talk about inspections, because the expectations and the way you navigate and negotiate inspections with the buyer starts with how listing agents set that tone in the listing appointment on how an inspection is going to go. And for 21, I'm going to call them 21 agents and 22 agents, the agents in 21 and 22, how often did they have to sit with a seller and truly set the expectation on the listing side with 1, disclosure, and how you're going to disclose because there's going to be an inspection. And if there's an inspection, I want you to be understanding of what a typical buyer is going to ask for. And so we're going to have to discuss this. All of this By the way, again, information about the market so that they know how to deal with inspections and negotiate those things in the listing appointment. But in reality, this is actually what a lot of what we talk about happens in the listing appointment. A lot about what we talk about happens in the buyer consultation. But the execution of negotiation is going to come out in sale price, in the terms of the contract, and then finally something we've never had to do, which is inspections. A lot of these agents, when they're talking with sellers, they don't have confidence in being able to read an inspection report and sit down with a seller and actually be able to do that and sit with a seller and negotiate a report that literally tells the seller everything that's wrong with their beautiful, perfect home that they just sold, that the market is telling them that everything's selling over asking price. So if they don't sit with a seller and they don't know how to negotiate an inspection reply, we're going to have deals falling apart because you have no expectation set with the seller and a listing professional that doesn't know how to negotiate an inspection report. This is where the circles overlap, where I need your listing skills to sit down with a seller, not you're on both sides. I usually do this with Kim because she does most stuff on listings, but we need listing side to sit down with a seller to know what to expect when they review and a report on their home and understand how to negotiate it is going to come from their agent. We get to the buyer, and now we're going to flip to buyers. Our job as buyer agents is, one, see the leverage. Like, realize that, wait a second, we're not in 20 and 21. So notice that the house has been on the market 8 days. The house actually isn't getting the interest. I don't care if they say there's a showing limit or there's a, what do we have, the time frame. Like, I don't care if the seller put on the listing offers due by Monday. If I see it on the market on Wednesday, you need to see the information as, wait a second, I have a buyer that is not going to waive inspections. This is the type of property that will be perfect by seeing the opportunity on the buying side. And getting back to buyer consultations, it's sitting down with buyers now in the market and shifting and knowing how to sharpen that tool for what your skills are going to be in finding the houses that you can negotiate inspections. And then how are you going to be a great agent in the consultation to make sure you're protecting them? Because the seller wants protection of their money spent on fixes to the house, and the buyer wants protection that they want to know that someone's there protecting the house that they're buying, that they're buying a home, that they actually have somebody that knows how to navigate inspections. So, man, what do you got to say about all that? Keep going. Talk about buyers a little bit.
Buyers, I think part of a negotiation is, I like the saying, you can't pour water into a pitcher that's full. And just think about that with your significant other. If you're ever in a disagreement and you never inject logic into an emotional situation, And what I mean by that is you have a buyer who's going through an emotionally charged situation. And in the Pennsylvania agreement of sale, if a buyer finds stuff in the inspection they're not comfortable with, they have the right to exit the agreement of sale within a certain amount of time. And it's very disarming, and it really takes the pressure off if the first thing you say to a buyer is, hey guys, if you're not comfortable with anything, we have the right to exit the agreement of sale at this point. And if you start, because order of information matters, if you start with that, now you take the pressure from here down to here, and they're like, no, we're still interested. It's a little bit more work than we thought if they would take care of X, Y, and Z. So with buyer inspections, it's important order of information. I'll give you another example of order of information and expectations, and to Adam's point about preparation. If you take the home inspector who goes through a property, same home, and he goes through it in two different orders. In the first inspection, he starts in the basement, and he starts with the heater, and he sees, oh, there's a rusted heat exchanger in here. For the next 3 hours, the whole home inspection is going to be a negative experience. Now, let me take that same home inspection, and that home inspector starts upstairs and ends in the basement. So for 2.5 hours, they've loved the house. They feel comfortable with the house. And now he gets to the basement at the end, and he says, look, the heat exchanger is rusted. It's a big repair, and it's going to have to be done. The buyers, how they perceive that information is, did they just look through the house for 3 hours through a negative lens? Or do they love the house and there's a big repair to be done? So order of information is a big thing I talk about when I do my sessions. as far as especially buyer inspections. The other thing is reminding, I mean, it really gets into the exchange of information. So the experts say we learn 30 times faster through the eyes, 30 times faster through the eyes. And what do I mean by that? Is that when sometimes I highly recommend all buyers attend inspections. Like I highly recommend that they go through and they see and live. But have you ever had a situation where one buyer goes and sees the whole inspection and then one person just reads the report? And the person who went and walked around and with the home inspector, they understand there's issues, but a good home inspector has shared the concern, but also the fixes. And then you get someone who gets home from work and reads this 33-page report and makes his house look awful.
Yep.
And again, that's just getting into how they're receiving the information, which is the start of a negotiation. They're getting that information.
I love this. So it's funny because we could do forever on this, because in reality, I think we could spend an hour on how we need to deal with this in the consultations themselves. Meaning, how do you show yourself to be a great negotiator when you're meeting with sellers? And we talked about that. It's knowing the information that the current market might be not what they expected, and you're going in with information and translating it on the listing side. And then the same thing, we could talk forever about how the buyer consultation will set the expectations in the process, so that when you get into the experience of climbing the mountain with the buyer, they actually follow me, trust me, and listen to me, so that I can negotiate that climb for them in a way that works. And we could talk about the consultations forever, but in reality, I want to get more into how we actually are becoming different negotiators now than we had to be. And we talked about price, right? We talked about on the listing side, I think you have to really sit down with a seller now and show them why pricing it wrong can really hurt them. And I usually say to the listing agents, we talk about, when you sit down with a seller and you say to them, look, we don't want to be wrong, but there's two ways we can be wrong here. If we price it overpriced and we're wrong, you're going to sit on the market forever and everybody's going to see you, as you said, the ugly banana, the brown banana. If we're wrong and we price it a little under market, I'm going to show you that being wrong there will be the greatest thing that ever happened. Because if you price it a little bit under market and you're wrong, you're going to get a wealth of interest and get too many buyers. If you price it under market and you don't get interest, you didn't price it under market. And so we have to decide. And by the way, this is the type of conversation I'm saying that I think listing agents will now have to have with sellers that they haven't had to have for a number of years. On the flip side, Christy, I'm going to get to you, but on the flip side, on the buying consultation, I actually believe my value now is seeing the market shifting for my buyers. One, talking to my buyers who have been on the fence, who want inspections and have been beat down by the crazy market. My ability to see the changing market and get those buyers back onto the mountain is critical, because now I have information that might actually get them into their home while other people still think it's a crazy market. And so ahead of time, before the consultation, it's like the listing side, get the information. On the buying side, you better have the information that when you're meeting with a buyer right now, how the market's shifting and how you can negotiate that. What I learned from Matt and myself is that even when the market becomes easier, say for the listing side, I don't want to say that, maybe it's fair for me to say that, but in 20 and 21, most people would say the listing side work was easier for a lot of agents. Even the great agents still kept doing everything that they've done through different shifting markets, because if they keep doing the same things, they'll get results in the easier market, but they'll also see the shift and know how to handle it. And I'm just in fear. Yeah, go ahead. Go.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
I just wanted to touch on the listing side, because from the contrast standpoint, you talked about pricing, and I just want to tie this into negotiation. I know we're coming down the home stretch here, but
good.
One of the things to become a better negotiator, you want to talk about the elephant in the room. So when that seller is sitting there with that traditional mentality of here's the list price, I want to leave some room to negotiate, versus, hey, I want to put it at market to get competing offers. They don't want to leave money on the table. And that's what they're thinking. You want the Jedi mind trick is for you to say, hey guys, here's I like to be competitive with the market. I like the market to do the heavy lifting, or I know you want to price it higher and leave some wiggle room. And now you talk about, hey guys, a lot of times you're thinking that because you don't want to leave anything on the table. And
Yeah, I
get
totally agree.
then once they say yes, now you understand them, right? And again, I always go back to a significant other, right? And you're talking to a significant other, you want to make some headway in a discussion late at night when they say something, when they feel heard. Now all of a sudden you're talking on a different level because they feel heard. So and with listings and list price, I wanted to mention that the second thing I wanted to mention was that you want to introduce more information to them, meaning when you're talking about pricing a house, whether you're using your MLS comps, whether you're using an online resource, your own office resource, you don't want to tell someone, don't tell me I'm wrong. None of us want to be wrong. None of us want to be told wrong. But what you want to do is introduce more information so you can say, hey, you saw the price here and you believe it's based on that. Great. Let me show you 2 or 3 other resources. Remember, you can't show too many. Otherwise, you end up like
Yep.
the cheese aisle at Wegmans where it's overwhelming, right? Like I can't pick out what cheese. Like there's a zillion different cheeses in there. But like you just give 2 or 3, and now you've introduced more information. Instead of, it's not I'm telling you we're different, because we're not going to be combative. I'm going to
Yep.
introduce more information. So I wanted to share those 2 points.
Actually, to take that further, by the way, Christy, I'm going to get to you. I know you had your hand raised, but I don't want to forget to say this. Man, I tell you right now, if people aren't using this, you said this earlier, and I should have really jumped on it, but stories work. Stories work on the listing side. I'm sure they do, but on the buying consultation, when I can share a story of my experience with a buyer where they did it one way and they had a problem, and I showing them, I want to help you avoid that problem, or they did it one way and they had immense success by doing it that way. Or if you haven't had that experience as an agent, hear the stories of other agents and say, man, there's a story I heard of a buyer or a seller. And I have to imagine in the listing side, if you really want to get your sellers and they're not willing to price it at the right price, stories of the sellers that are pained by, let me show you a house that's been on the market for 60 days and then it's sold, but it's sold well under list price, and have that story ready to show them. Because if you have that exact listing that paints the picture without you telling them they're wrong, like he said, don't tell them they're wrong, but they can't tell you you're wrong if you have an exact house that's been on the market 50 days, that did price reductions and then sold for under list price. Show them the other one that was on the market 3 days and sold for 20% over asking price. And now they'll decide, who do I want to be? So I love stories. And the same thing with buyers. My buyers need to understand that if you make a mistake, you could be this buyer over here and the story over here. But if you do it the right way, you could be buyer in this story over here. And as long as they're genuine, real stories, this is what works. All right, Christy Becker, what do you got? I totally didn't get to you.
No, it's fine. It kind of goes with what you're saying, because I have a listing that's been sitting for a week in Philly, and going into it, it's a kid I went to school with. He flips houses. He's a very nice guy, but he's kind of like a one-upper, and he knows a lot, whatever. So I told him what I wanted to go into it, comped it, and I comped it not solely, but mostly on a condo in that. And it's like maybe 25 units. It's like real small.
Yep.
It was up for 285, went down to 280, finally sold for 275, sat on the market for 54 days. So I was like, in my opinion, I would put it up for 275. Absolutely not. He thought it was too low. He wanted 300. He's like, I'm greedy. I'm like, okay, in my opinion, I wouldn't do that. So I'm not going to tell him he's wrong. We put it up for 299. Not one person has asked to see it. I did 2 open houses the first week. And I think the first day his wife did it because she just got back into real estate. So he still gave it to me because we already had an agreement. I think he had like 3 people come in. That was it. The next day, nobody looked at it. Still nothing. So now I want to go in today. It's been a week. So I just want what I would go in saying, to not tell him he's wrong. Like, listen, this is what I wanted to price it at. Would you want it to sit another week and still have nothing, nobody looking at it, no interest? Like, what kind of way would you go in with that?
I give you some thoughts, man, Matt. I'm going to get thoughts on the listing side. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm getting out of my world for a second. But I think you're okay with this. I love you, and I know that I'm always like, we know each other. I think going into that listing, if you felt like it was overpriced, I would have set the stage of, if we don't get interest or offers, I'm putting my flag over here. And if we don't get that, we're going to do this so you don't have to have that conversation now. You already set the tone into it, saying, if this happens, then this is my opinion. And that way you don't have to have it. So But now you just need to get, Matt, you give the opinion on what she should do now. I had my thoughts on what I would do differently in the listing appointment, but what do you think she should do now?
Christy, I would just go in with this question of Mr. and Mrs. Seller, how long would you like your house to sit on the market? And then I would go quiet. And because to your point, he's a one-upper and he knows everything, let him talk it out. And if you use how or what or an open-ended question, let him talk himself through the process. And it might not be the answer you want, but you're gonna get further along with how and what, because again, to your point, you identified he's very confident in his opinion. So I wouldn't recommend battling that, but I would get him to talk. It's almost like therapy, and I'm in therapy. Like, I'm a big believer in therapy. Like, you just want him to talk through it, and that will I think that will get you to the where you want to be quicker. Not tomorrow, not at the next conversation, but you have to have a mindset in, all right, I'm going to do this for the next 2, 3, 4 weeks.
Yes.
And you'll get to the point.
Yes, you know what's funny? Man, why is it like we went so the wild, wild west where we're not willing to take our time with listings to move people along sometimes where it doesn't happen right now. Like, Christy, it might not happen in that first conversation. It might be a series of, man, eventually he's going to listen to you because he's realizing he's not getting his way the way you can't control the market. I will say this, one other thing that I would add to help, if you can find data that he can't disprove, like what house went on the market that sold while you've been on the market? There's competition sold between when you went on and when he went on, because now you're saying to him, we just helped that other person sell their house. How many other people do you want to help sell? I'm going to keep showing you your competition that's on the market, and I'm going to show it sell while you're on the market. And all we're doing is helping. So the information, I think, that you're showing them will help you get them to realize, like, again, it's not you making the decision, it's me. It's the same thing as if a buyer tells me they want to offer some way low price, and then I can show them, well, it's not me. The buyers actually paid way more than that at the end of the day. I didn't give you that bad news. The bad news came from the data. This is, man, it really gets back to it, Matt. Like, I know we're coming at the end, but literally, I love when you said that negotiation is about the transfer of data, the sharing of information back and forth, because it's not buyers and sellers negotiating. It's actually starts with listing agents negotiating with sellers while buyer agents separately are negotiating with buyers. I love that we didn't spend really any time on the buyer consult today, but in reality, there's so much that you have to do as buyer agents to negotiate, actually understand that you can negotiate inspections. And by the way, I'm going to be sickened by the amount of houses that go back on the market over inspections for little things that an agent just doesn't know. Like, in the buyer consultation, you should be setting all of the tone for what an inspection report is going to look like, how to respond, how we're going to respond. We're going to focus on big items. We're going to have that conversation, because the worst thing that's going to happen is you, the buyer, get an inspection. Here's how I look at it. Man, this might not be good, but like you're under contract for a home. It's like the greatest date you have ever had in your whole life. You went on a date, you had an amazing date, and literally you're like thinking about that date and you're under contract. You got the house and you're like, great. And then you go to do an inspection, but the date that you're meeting for the day date or just to go play tennis or whatever you're doing isn't the same as the date. Like, I don't get ready differently, so I'm not going to look the same. So when you do inspections, you're actually taking that amazing feeling and they're poking little nails or needles at the buyer of why the house may not be perfect. And if you don't set the tone in consultation that we're not looking for perfect, then the inspection is going to be this value to us. And here's how we're going to handle big items. Here's how we're going to handle little items. And you do that in the consultation, you won't be falling apart when you're trying to negotiate an inspection. And I got to tell you guys, there is nothing worse in this business than having a buyer that's very ready to negotiate genuinely, easily with a seller. But then you have a seller and a listing agent that are literally negotiating like they have no idea what they're doing. And so we need both listing agents and buyer agents to understand how to negotiate inspections, how to sit down with sellers, what it should be, what it shouldn't be, because we're going to run into this problem. We're going to run into sellers that don't know what they're doing, with agents that don't know what they're doing, with buyer agents that they hired their buyer agent because they did 1 million deals, or they hired their listing agent because they did 1 million deals. And then all of a sudden, the only deal they got was a deal with an inspection and they need a new roof, or oh my God, there's 10 GFIs that need to be replaced, and the buyer agent doesn't even know what a GFI is. The buyer doesn't know what a GFI is. The listing agent never even heard the word GFI. And so now we're losing deals over little things. So, man, I just went off. Sorry. But like, that's why this is important. I literally could go like on and on and on why if you're here and you've been in this business long, it's time to start sharpening those tools like Matt talked about that you haven't had to use. Things you haven't had to talk about. Get your inspection replies back out because you're going to have to use them again. Or even better, we didn't even talk about price, but man, you can actually offer under asking price on a home when the time is right and the opportunity is right. And you can actually negotiate a sale price and not be competing with 50 other buyers. You want to show how great you are? Tell your buyer that the last 5 deals you did well under the market average of under asking price, not over asking price. That's just price. Man, 5 o'clock. I want to respect your time, my friend. I know you're busy. Does anybody have questions? Last time we did this and I left literally no question opportunity, and I sit here and go off and realize I don't give everybody an opportunity. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions? Because I'm here and I'm going to let some silence happen for a second to give anybody some chance to speak up.
Hey, I'm going to jump in, even if I'm not one of
go
the
for
realtors
it.
here. Just based on last conversations that we had where Kim Rock was there was a lot of good, like, processes that she has in place for things that she tracks all the time so that she can always be prepared on best and latest market knowledge for, preparing for listing for these negotiation discussions.
Yes.
So I thought that was that was in my brain every time you're saying like exchange of information. What information? How do you get it? What's your process to keep track of it ongoing? So maybe it's worth a listen to some old behind the real estate curtains for that. So I just wanted to mention it.
You're making me sad because I'm missing my cohort who's in Hawaii. I'm missing Kim who's in Hawaii.
She's not missing us in Hawaii. That's
no, she's
sure.
not at all. But I love that. And you're absolutely right. What Kim talked about, what Jackie's talking about is she literally rattled off like, it was almost like insane when she rattled off all these data points that she does when she goes into a listing appointment. And it's average list price to sale price. It's days on market. It's inventory. It's absorption rate. It's all these data points that are information that many listing agents literally just go, you can list it between 500 and 550. And here's my marketing package. But don't worry, we're going to put it on the market on Friday. We'll get 50 offers. And I love that. Man, I don't know all those data points, but I think you're right. Like,
yeah, and in the chat, someone's asking where can they find that? I think maybe Courtney can help. Just send out.
That's awesome. YouTube.
Yes, on YouTube.
The YouTube channel has all of our recordings, and so all the recordings are on YouTube. That would have been, I think it would have been the last one we did where we had the guest talking about her company, which basically talks about relocation and getting to know people. I think that's where we talked about it. Any other questions? Anything from Matt? Dude, I appreciate you very, very much.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Surviving, brother. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions? I think the one thing I want everybody to gather for today is if you want to really thrive in this market, like finding people that are not just doing transactions, but finding the people that you see as always sharpening their tools, always looking at their business and going, yeah, it works now, but it might not work in 6 months. So you better get on top of it. Those are the people that are going to find long-term careers. 25 years is a long time, brother. Like that's a long time. There is a lot of stories that I know I have, and you got even more than me. There's stories that we have that we used, and that those experiences in different markets are what help us negotiate the most expensive thing these people are going to ever buy or sell in their entire lives. If it's the first time they do it or the next time, it's always the more expensive thing that they've ever bought. And I'm really afraid that people are going to start falling off Mount Everest because they weren't understanding what this process looks like and negotiating that climb. And I appreciate you being willing to like really volunteer your time for agents to give them I think all of us want agents to actually love their lives while doing the work that we're doing. And it's volunteerism, buddy. I love that you're willing to do it, and I appreciate you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
How can people find you? I always got to ask that. How can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Matt Mittman Speaks.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
We're going to send the link of the recording out to everybody in our database. But make sure you follow Matt. Obviously, you got to follow me on Instagram. And I will leave it at this. My beautiful bride and I are going for America's favorite couple. You guys got to vote. Get on every day and vote. Don't pay for any votes. Just go on and vote for free. I don't want anybody donating.
One free vote every day.
One free vote every day for just make my wife happy. Please just do it. No, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys very much. I will see you next month. Man, Matt, thank you again, brother.
Great stuff. I appreciate the opportunity.
I'll see you guys soon. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.